Good evening. Oh, that's power. I like that feeling. I want this every time I walk in a room. This is great. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to everyone tuning in at home. Welcome to the Chateau Laurier. My name is Sean. I'm the artistic director of the Writers Festival, and on behalf of the Writers Festival and our partners at the Ottawa Public Library, I want to thank you for being here. It's a remarkable gift that we get to gather and listen to brilliant people year after year who tell us how they do what they do, why they do what they do, and inspire us to buy lots of books. Is there a hum in the room? I'm hearing an echo, but they're going to fix that. Before we get into the program, I want to remind everybody. Now, I know this is a great audience, and I don't feel any guilty vibes here, but if you've been buying books from Amazon, if you've been doing that, I just want you to think about how much wage theft is required to get a rocket into space. How much suffering does it take for one little man to be a little man in the air instead of on Earth? And I'll tell you, Jim is working hard, but it's not a rocket ship that he's got. It's just a business that pays a living wage and pays taxes. And so if you're going to buy, and I know you're going to buy, lots of copies of Beverley's book tonight. Every book you buy from Jim here at Perfect Books, he's going to make a donation to the festival to support our continued activity and to help us keep going. When you buy it from Jeff, he's taking it in outer space and dumping it. So think about that. Those are your two options. And if for some reason, you have another local bookstore, support them. Ottawa is up to 5 bookstores again. I'm so thrilled that there are 2 new ones that opened since the pandemic. Shop local, I guess, is all I'm here to tell you. The other thing I should say about local is we're standing on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. I'm not a particularly smart guy, but that is, as I understand it, legal jargon that means stolen land. And I've been spending an incredible amount of time thinking about what does it mean to be on occupied territory? What does it mean that I live, my home, my work, my entire life is on unceded territory that was taken from the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. And obviously, it's not my job to tell you what to think about anything, but I would just encourage all of us to spend a little bit of time to get to know our history. And what I would say is the best way to do that is, again, go to Perfect Books. They have an amazing Indigenous section there, where there are books you can buy that will tell you everything you need to know. And if you don't want to go to Perfect Books, go to the public library. They have amazing resources, and it's free. So the one thing I guess I want to say is I'm not going to tell you what to think about the fact that we are on unceded territory, but I hope you will think about it and come to whatever conclusion you have. I know it has enriched my life a great deal to think about and know the history of where I am standing, and I think it would be valuable for everyone. The other thing I want to say is the festival, our fall festival, is fast approaching, October 23 to 27. We have a whole ton of events now and then. But the big thing I want to draw everyone's attention to is the first couple of rows here. And I know you're feeling the aura, you're feeling the vibe, because studies have shown that people that donate to literacy charities, specifically festivals, 46% more attractive within 5 minutes, within 5 minutes. And what is interesting is that attractiveness grows over the coming weeks until it peaks at 78% more attractive. And what's interesting is that starts to decline after 4 months. So we need to hear from you at least 3 times a year, and the people in your life are going to notice the difference. I'm just telling you, there's a glow. Look at the people up front here who have allowed us to do what we do. Thank you for your support. All of you in the back could be up here looking this good, is all I want you to think about. And in addition to looking good, you can also feel good knowing you're doing the right thing. You're allowing us to continue, because I will tell you, I don't want to belabor the point, but this is a bad time for literary arts in Canada. The government funding is dried up. It is anemic. We get less than half of what we got under Prime Minister Harper, a noted friend of literature. Right? Half. half, and there's been inflation. And so what that means in real terms is that it's up to us as a community to say, do we want the festival? Do we like hearing from Beverley? Do we like having Charlotte come up and host events? Do we like what we can do? I know the answer for me. That's why I'm a patron. But for all of you, we can't do it without your support. So you're already doing the right thing by being in the building. I know you're all buying, and we're going to limit it, I think, because Beverley can't stay too long, so 13 copies per customer. Okay, if we can keep it under that, because we need to keep the line moving. But again, just thank you so much for being here. And part of the wonderful thing about community is we've got partners. And so we're here in this beautiful space thanks to our friends at the Ottawa Public Library. They've been a wonderful partner to us. This is probably the only reason I can read and write, is that I had a library card as a kid and spent a lot of time at that main branch, and I can't wait for the new main branch to open. But it's just such a remarkable gift that we get to bring together all the book lovers, the independent bookstores and the public library, and all of you, and Charlotte and Beverley. So this is like a big win tonight for literature. And I'm just so grateful you're all here. After the event, the book signing will be right over there. So just try not to get in between Beverley and that table, because we want to get the signing so that she can get home at a reasonable hour. And thank you so much for being here. It is my pleasure now to introduce the CEO of the Ottawa Public Library, Sonia Babington, who's going to say a few words now. Thank you so much for being here. Let's give a warm welcome to Sonia. There we go.
Sean's a tough act to follow. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Ottawa launch of Beverley McLachlin's latest legal thriller, Proof. I am indeed Sonia Babington, Chief Librarian and CEO of Ottawa Public Library, part of the large community of book lovers and supporters of literacy and the culture of reading, and I'm delighted to be here with you this evening. And we're happy to have you at this event. It promises to be very engaging, and it features two fantastic Canadian women, each with a meaningful connection to our city. First, let me introduce our host and interviewer for this event, the renowned author and historian, Charlotte Gray. Charlotte is one of Canada's best-known writers with a remarkable ability to bring history to life. And I told her one of my own personal anecdotes about Sisters in the Wilderness earlier this evening. Her works, such as Sisters in the Wilderness, The Massey Murder, Gold Diggers, The Promise of Canada, have not only garnered critical acclaim, but have also made important contributions to our understanding of our history. It's also clear that Charlotte loves archives and libraries, and so we love Charlotte. And we're fortunate to have her guide us through the discussion this evening, so thank you. And it's also my great pleasure to introduce author and special guest, former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada, the Right Honourable Beverley McLachlin. In addition to being the first woman to serve in the role, Beverley is the longest-serving Chief Justice of Canada, and she has left an indelible mark on the country's legal landscape. But many of you maybe didn't read her legal decisions. So now we can connect with her through her memoir, Truth Be Told, and through her work as a novelist. Her transition from the bench to the world of award-winning fiction has been nothing short of extraordinary. Her previous novels, Full Disclosure and Denial, have captivated readers with fast-paced plots and plot twists, compelling characters, and insights both into the law and people navigating their way through it. Proof is her third thrilling work of fiction. We're honored to have her with us on this evening. With two such distinguished voices on the stage today, I think it's going to be a truly memorable conversation, and I can't wait. So Beverley is going to come and start with a reading, and then we're going to move into the questions. So please join me in welcoming our special guest, Right Honourable Beverley McLachlin, in conversation with Charlotte Gray.
Do you want to say a few words? I am going to listen now with rapt attention because I've persuaded Beverley that the way we will construct this evening is that she is going to read a passage And then we'll have a bit of conversation, and then she'll read another passage, and we will talk some more. And I have a huge list of questions, but I have to say I'm completely confident that I have no idea where the conversation will go, because we're friends. She's a wonderful talker, but more than that, she is so smart that she will have her hand on the rudder. So, Beverley, would you like to start by doing a short reading?
Yes. So thank you, Charlotte. And I'm really looking forward to this and looking forward to all those questions that I don't know about. It's going to be very interesting. So this book takes the heroine of my first two novels into new territory. She has lost her partner, and she has also had a child, a little daughter. Now, her character is, as those of you who've read the other books know, that of a feisty courtroom defense lawyer. And she's good at it, and she's confident, and she's made this world of the criminal law her world. And now suddenly she finds herself in a new world where she is unexpectedly a mother, and what's more, a mother without a second parent to help her. And she finds herself challenged and unsure of who she is, where she's going, and how she is going to manage to be a mother, and whether she'll ever get back to the criminal law. So this is the first chapter. The phone on my nightstand pings. I feel for it, welcome relief from my sleepless state, and bring it to my face, squinting at the bright screen. It's not an emergency alert. British Columbia reserves those for the tsunami that will roll in at any year now and destroy us all. But the message makes my heart thud. Child gone missing, the Amber Alert reads. Instinctively, I reach for the bassinet by my bed where my baby daughter sleeps. I find Claire's face to trace the warm, smooth skin of her forehead. Somewhere, a desperate mother is weeping for her lost child, but my little girl is here with me, safe. Gently, so not to wake her, I lift Claire out of the bassinet and draw her to my chest, stroking her tuft of hair, dark like mine in the pre-dawn light, and will my heart to stop pounding. She stirs for a moment, then settles, her chest rising and falling with each breath. She's 15 weeks old. Jilly Truitt, criminal defense attorney. If only they could see me now. In the old days, I would be rising, tugging on my sweats for my pre-work run, and rehearsing questions to skewer a prosecutor's witness in the courtroom. But that was then, and this is now. After a few moments, I place Claire back in her bed and lay down on my side, gazing at my baby girl. I blink away the exhausted remains of a sleepless night. Postpartum depression. That's what Edith says I have. Wise Edith, the social worker who rescued me as an orphan baby and shepherded me through foster homes. I didn't argue with her, but I know it's more than that. It's grief. Motherhood wasn't something I craved, nor was it something I swore off. I always thought, though, that when I took the leap, I'd have someone by my side. I'd have Mike, but then a bullet changed that. If only I hadn't taken Vera Quentin's case. Last month marked the one-year anniversary of his death. I woke up that morning feeling out of sorts, out of alignment. I had a weight on my chest, a pain that I couldn't shift. Later I realized my body remembered what my brain forgot. Gone a year, and yet when I close my eyes, I still see Mike's long face and beaky nose, the shift of his cool gray eyes from dark to light when he smiled at me. We met in first-year law and passed the next decade plus as best friends and occasional lovers. Mike wanted more, kids and the whole bit, but I wasn't ready. And then when a disgruntled client put out a hit on me last year, I ran to Mike for help, and the killer got him instead of me. Mike saved my life, but lost his own. Postpartum depression and grief. A month after Mike died, I found out I was pregnant. I will keep this child, I told the doctor. It's all I have left of him. I held myself together through the pregnancy, but when they slipped Claire into my arms, I broke down. Mike would never see his daughter, and I had to raise her alone. Tough as nails in the courtroom, I feared I would fail as a parent. I longed for Mike, for his presence, for his strength and understanding, for him to tell me that the bullet that killed him wasn't my fault. Above all, I longed for him to tell me that it will not happen again, that Claire will be safe, that she'll live a long life. Depression, grief, labels I can't make the fear of losing what I love go away. Labels can't make the fear of losing what I love go away, pardon me. Go back to work, Edith tells me. That will cure me. Each week I think I might be ready. Each Monday I force myself to my closet. I finger the dark court suits, preserved in protective plastic for the day when I will need them again, and turn away. I have no time for keeping the people who do bad things out of jail. That's why I lost Mike. Someday I will be a lawyer again, but not today. I cupped Claire's head. Somewhere a mother has lost her child.
So, I bet there were a few thumps and sinking in the stomachs when you heard that, and also an intense sharing of an intense emotional. Beverley, tell me about the origin of Jilly Truitt, your main character in 3 books now. When did she spring to life in your mind?
A very, very long time ago, long before I became a judge. I was teaching law at UBC, and I would read these legal thrillers, and I often would tell my students to do it just to get a sense of how the law works and so on. And the main characters were always male, always, you know, Perry Mason, and one goes on and on and on. And it rather annoyed me. I thought, we need at least one female lawyer who is smart and feisty and fights for her clients. And I thought, wouldn't it be great to develop such a character and write about it? And I started thinking about it, and I even started writing about it, and then I was called to be on the bench, and I wisely decided that I would be a better judge than a novel writer. And for almost 40 years, I did that. And so Jilly Truitt was forgotten in the back of my mind. But when I was about to retire and I didn't have any particular projects lined up or anything that I would be doing, I thought, oh, maybe I'll think about this. She came to me again, and I thought, it's a long time later, the world is a different place. There are now a lot of very smart, feisty female lawyers in our court, but maybe the world could still use a fictional one. And I started writing again, and in my spare time, just in the months before I retired, and then put it together. I never dreamed it would ever be published, and but it was, and with the help of editors, we pulled it together and made it readable, and that was the beginning. So that's where Jilly Truitt came from.
So in your legal career, the majority of it was actually spent on the bench, but you make your main character, in fact, a criminal defense lawyer. And in this book, the judge is a pretty unsympathetic character. He's described as having a sharp nose and a prosecutorial bent. Why did you decide that Jilly should be a lawyer in private practice?
I think you can write more interesting things about a lawyer than a judge. I don't know. I've always thought I'm I don't know how many more books I'll write, but if any. But I would like to write a book about a judge, and
will Jilly go to the bench?
We could send her there. I don't know. I don't know if she'd be a good judge. She might be, but I think she would be. But that's a possibility. But I think a criminal lawyer deals with clients in a very obviously close way. You get really close to the crime. You get close to the dynamics that gave rise to the crime and the defenses and how everything is plotted. By the time you get to the judge, all that's been done. So I thought maybe it was better to have her as a criminal lawyer.
It's a really complicated and satisfactory plot. You'll love it. But how do you set about putting it all together? I mean, are you like Ian Rankin, who always says that he starts and he doesn't know how it's going to end, and he doesn't know who the guilty party is? Or do you know the beginning, the middle, and the end before you begin? And you know, how do you plot it out?
That's a good question. And last night, I learned that there's now a jargon for this dichotomy. And I've been twice now at events like this asked whether I was a pantser or a planner. And I didn't know what a pantser was. I thought it was some sort of military weapon, but I was a bit bewildered, and I was told a pantser is a novelist who takes it, as Ian Rankin, by the seat of their pants, and literally lurches from idea to idea and event to event, and never knows how things are going to turn out. And it appears that the world of fiction writing is divided between pantsers and planners. And
which are you?
I'm somewhere in between. I'm mostly a pantser, but I like to know, have some sort of an idea of how things could work out in the end. Otherwise, you're just going down a track to nowhere. And you need to consider your characters, set them up, and the events, and set them up so things happen that lead to a trial that has certain issues, and then a resolution. And so you do have to think about what's coming next in some sense, and what the end is going to be. But it's amazing. I was with two other novel writers last night at an event like this, and we were each asked to answer this question. And the consensus of most of us was we did some planning, but that a lot of it's spontaneous, and there's a lot of shifting along the way, and things change. So the extreme idea of a novelist, and there are such people who do a schematic before they put pen to paper of the actual novel, writing what's going to happen, writing a set of characters, writing what's going to happen in each chapter, and they know that chapter 57 is going to have this, and 58 and 59 will be the final one. Some people have done that, but that's very unusual, I would think, from what I can see. People have an idea, but they let it grow, and things happen to them as they're putting their characters together, and they see new possibilities, and so it's quite a loose process. And as one of the writers last night said, she said, if I could make an outline that detailed, I wouldn't have to write the book. And I think part of the fun of being a fiction writer is that things happen that you don't expect to happen in your mind and on the page. And you say, yeah, that's how that person would speak, or how they would act, as you get to know your characters better. And then you go in unexpected directions, and that's what makes it a lot of fun, I think. And
do your characters sometimes take you by surprise?
Yeah, they do. And of course, this is a metaphor, I'm sure, but our conscious mind is operating at a certain level, but then beneath the consciousness, our brain is working. I think it's that way for all artists and probably a lot of people in other professions. And so you work your conscious work, and then you'll go to sleep, and you'll get up in the morning, and you'll be in the shower, or you'll take a walk, and suddenly you see how it should be, and your character has done something you didn't think they would do, or said something you didn't think they would say, and you're quite surprised. So it's the part of your brain that's playing around, maybe when you're dreaming, with ideas, I don't know, and putting possibilities and combinations together, and then suddenly you wake up and you realize consciously that this has been going on. And maybe you reject it because it's crazy, or maybe it's good, maybe it works. So that's how it works for me.
Because there are some wonderful characters in this book, sort of fairly extraneous ones, like an elderly dad who I wondered whether, in fact, you knew he was going to be as important to the plot as he turns out to be.
No, he started off totally different, and then he just grew on me and grew into a different kind of person, that's what happens. I mean, they talk about layering characters, and a lot of crime fiction doesn't do a lot of that, but I think this book may be a little better than the first two at actually seeing that characters are not monolithic and they're not stereotypical. They have a lot of different facets and sometimes very interesting and unexpected things in their character and in how they act. And that's, I think, what great novelists, and I don't consider myself one, really do really, really well. It comes from this living with the character as though it's another human being, a real human being.
A strong theme of this book, as we heard in your first reading, is motherhood and the intensity of a mother-baby bond, the pain of separation, post-birth blues. And I mean, your previous books had also had a theme, like the first one was very much about art. Was this a conscious choice on your part, that this was going to be sort of part of the sort of arc of the book? And how much were you drawing on your own experience?
It was a conscious choice. I was thinking a lot about children. We read a lot about children who are the victims in crimes, and children who suffer from various things, various aspects of bad parenting or no parenting. And it's always been something that's haunted me, and yet you don't have many books, fiction books about it. And so I thought that I'd like to write about the central child in this book is a little girl who gets kidnapped, and the Crown says gets killed because they find evidence that they think it shows that she's been drowned at sea. And then they charge her mother, who has not always been the best mother, who's had her own difficulties, but who loves her child passionately, and they charge her with murder. So you have that dynamic. And then it's echoed a bit with Jilly's relationship with her daughter, which has its own challenges, but is not at all in the same arena as this crime, and the fear of the parents who have lost their child, the anguish, the fear for the child. There are so many things that can happen to a child. It could be a kidnapping for ransom. It could be some sexual pedophile. It could be, you go on and on and on. And so there's a lot of pathos there and a lot of things to think about. And I think that helps give depth to the story.
Yes, you feel what you really paint very vividly is the vulnerability of a mother.
They're so vulnerable. And at one point I take on the notion of, ownership. There's this situation where there seems to be an assumption that because I've genetically this child has my genetic material, I somehow control it, own it, etc., which is another notion I like. I hope the reader will think about. Is that how we should be thinking about parent-child relationships? So there's a lot there to explore. On the second part of your question, did I draw on my own? Yes, of course, to some extent. Of course, I didn't live these traumas, and but in discussing Jilly's Jilly's path toward acceptance of motherhood, and she starts off thinking she's a failure as a mother, and she gradually gets more and more comfortable with her daughter, and it ends on a very happy note for them. And everybody's pretty comfortable. They haven't got necessarily the classic mom, dad, baby situation, but everybody's worked things out, and they found themselves in another kind of family. So I was a mother. I wasn't a single mother. I got great help from my child's father, but I was a lawyer, and I had to face this guilt, the worry that are you going to? I would not be with my child enough, and that would somehow let him down, make him less than he could have been. And I harbored that guilt. I write about it a bit in my memoir, but so I remember he's quite adult at this point, and I said, I've been thinking about how many times I wasn't there when you came home from school, and this and that and the other thing, and I said, I really think I was a pretty bad mom. And he just looked at me and he said, Mom, get over it. So it was a child teacher, a reverse parent-child moment. And he said, and I realized, and we talked about it a little, that what he really needed was to know I was there for him when I had to be there for him. And the fact that I might be sitting in court all day and he might be alone for some hours and might be without my presence at certain soccer matches or whatever, that was regrettable perhaps, but he knew that mentally and spiritually and in my soul, I was with him all the time, and that I would be there for him. And if you can instill that, I thought, in a child, then it'll be fine. The child will be secure. And so I got lucky. But that kind of attention and those kind of worries come through a bit in the book.
I think that sort of many of us have felt that tremendous dilemma. I remember a moment when my husband and I were raising our children, and I was at some event, and there were quite a lot of kids there, and several of them were yelling, Mum, Mummy, Mum. And then finally, I heard a voice saying, Charlotte Gray. And I realized that I hadn't turned around when somebody said, Mum, 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 Mum. As soon as I was addressed by my author name, I turned around, and he said, I couldn't get your attention. And I can tell you the pang of guilt was pretty strong.
Oh, that happened to me too. When my husband really wants to get my attention, he says, Chief. and I listen every time.
Sort of Pavlovian. Which name will you answer to? Actually, I love the fact that you give your readers a real sense of getting the behind-the-scenes stuff, the strategies of defense lawyers, the way that the police departments work, the flexibility of the law. At one point, this old dad that I spoke about, he keeps ahead of the game because he's learned so much from TV crime series.
Yeah.
But would that actually really help in practice? Or how much do programs like CSI or whatever suggest that a lawyer is going to take the case and wrap it all up in 1 hour without commercials?
Yeah.
I mean, did you find in your career that actually the public thought they knew how the law operated from television, particularly American television, and in fact, had no idea how long things take or what the rules are?
And I have to say that even writing a novel, you have to collapse it, because these court cases can take an awfully long time. You can have weeks of ennui in the courtroom, and nobody would read it if you put it in, and you have to compress it to try to get the essence of it. I think people can learn bits and pieces, and they can learn in general how, you know, the prosecution presents the case and the defense, and they can learn little bits of things, and sometimes quite a bit. In this case, the aging father, he finds an important piece of evidence, because he won't give up, and he keeps looking, and he finally uncovers it. But he's smart enough, he's watched enough TV to know that he shouldn't dig it up and put his fingerprints all over it and you know, run down the hill with it. And instead he just marks it, and so that makes a big difference, right? So he felt very proud of himself for having had that much information. But then he tells his lawyer, Jilly, now we're going to keep this a secret. And he says, I know we can keep this a secret because I know that the defense doesn't have to show the Crown the evidence it has. You can pull this out at the trial and it'll be a big surprise. And she says, no, you're right in law in a sense. The rule is that a defense only has to disclose incriminating evidence. But she says, this is important evidence that could cut both ways, and it's too important to finding the child potentially, and I just think that the proper thing to do is to call the police, and she does. And he's very upset with her because
Because they don't do that on television.
They don't do that on television, no.
But your first reading was very much about the motherhood theme that dominates the book in some ways. But of course, as I have said, we also learn a lot about the law. And I wondered if you'd now do a second reading which sort of illustrates the other side of Jilly, the incisive defense lawyer.
Yeah. So I'm not going to read from the final pages where the trial takes place and so on, because I don't want to.
No spoilers.
Spoilers. But shortly before the trial takes place, Jilly, the defense lawyer, invites her prosecutor, Cy Kenge, to lunch with the purpose of making one last effort to get him to drop the case. And she's convinced herself that, you know, it's not a strong case. They don't actually have a body of the child, and he thinks she makes this last attempt to get him to not go to trial, avoid putting everybody through the misery of this trial, and of course get her client would then go free. And Cy Kenge has been her mentor in the early years of her career, and he is her eternal courtroom opponent, and he fights with no holds barred within mostly what the law allows. So that's the background relationship. So at this point, she's having lunch with him. My to-do lists checked off. I have one last crack at Cy. I'm having trouble reading with the glare of the lights. To persuade him to call off the trial. Another lunch, I say, this time on me, tomorrow. Once again, we meet at Bacchus. I settle into my wingback chair and survey my one-time mentor and eternal adversary. His face is more drawn than I remember, and his jacket hangs loosely on his shrunken frame. His pallor frightens me. Cy, who sees everything, acknowledges my unstated observations. Yes, Jilly, I'm getting old. I reach across the table to cover his hand. You don't have to do this case, Cy. He withdraws his hand. Jilly, I will do this case. I don't have to disclose defense details, Cy, and I won't. But we have evidence that Tess did not die that day on the boat. We have facts that will blow Dante's identification out of the water and discredit him. I think of how Cy went out of his way to get me back into the law. I lower my voice to a whisper. You don't want to go out this way, Cy. Drop the charges. It's not too late. Ha, he says harshly. As always, you are wildly overconfident, my dear Jilly. I have everything I need, and I have Kate's hair in the boat. Try as you will, the hair cannot be explained away. Kate was there that day with Tess. Tess's clothing washed up on the beach. Tess died, and Kate must be brought to justice. Don't forget the other shoe, Cy. Any number of explanations for that. And the jury will have enough. Enough to put Miss Sinclair Jones behind bars for a long time. He leans forward. Where she belongs. She was a terrible mother, Jilly, from the beginning to when she finally threw her baby over the side of the boat. She did drugs. She was spaced out half the time. If it hadn't been for the nanny, the child would have perished. What are you talking about, Cy? Have you been trolling through those gossip sites? That's not who Kate is. Do not judge, I want to say. There is another side to the story. A mother struggling with a failing marriage, a mother finding herself increasingly isolated and finally excluded and replaced, a mother succumbing to mental illness that made all the losses feel plausible and deserved. Cy's face has settled into deep lines. Anger? Old age and the unraveling of judgment? Or could it be that Cy harbors subconscious racial bias? The mother identifies as black. Cy leans forward, his great forehead close enough for me to see the anguish in his eyes. A child is the most precious thing one can have in this life. That a parent would abuse that great gift is beyond my comprehension. I get it. Cy is remembering the baby boy he and Lois lost decades ago. His son was less than a year old when he died. To see a woman like Kate do what she did to her child, Cy breaks off, overcome. He leans back into his chair. I despise those who mistreat their children. The only tool I have is the law, and I will use it. He returns to me, his eyes burning into mine. I will see Kate Sinclair Jones behind bars if it's the last thing I do. Woe back, Cy, I say. It's not your place to judge. Plus, you know the police botched this investigation from the beginning. They've only ever focused on Kate, and they've missed crucial evidence. Your case is not as strong as you think it is. Your personal feelings are clouding your judgment, my friend. Cy shifts his torso. Sitting in one place is hard on his twisted spine. I expect him to counter with a robust defense of the police effort to find Tess, but he surprises me. Thanks for the reminder, Jilly. I'm just a prosecutor. My job is to present the evidence the law has dug up and let the jury decide on guilt or innocence. And that's what I will do at the trial, whatever my personal feelings about your client. Just as you, my dear Jilly, will defend your client despite any feelings you may have. Your job is to find the soft underbelly of the Crown's case, if you can, and get your client acquitted. That's how the system operates. A funny way to find the truth, but it works. He pauses. His eyes are tired and his smile is wan. Most of the time. I think about the wrongful convictions I have witnessed, born of vengeance and nurtured by sloppy police work. Yes, most of the time.
Shakes one's faith in the law, I think. That's a brilliant passage, and it goes on. The next chapter, Jilly is addressing a bunch of lawyers about work balance, work-life balance, which is, as you can see from the two passages that Beverley has read, very much the substance of this book, over and above a gripping crime story. You write in this very particular genre, crime thriller, where the main character is a lawyer, And there are so many esteemed practitioners like Scott Turow and John Grisham. Have you always been an avid reader of such thrillers?
Yes, I always have, because I'm so interested, always have been, in the criminal justice system. And so I pick up these things. I don't read a lot of John Grisham, but I've read quite a few books, and I've read most of what Scott Turow has written. And I like to see the way they handle the investigative parts, how they handle the courtroom drama, and they're just the ideas on justice that they present through their characters and through the actions.
But you read so much else. I mean, you and I have had long conversations about Alice Munro and other writers for whom lawyers are actually out of reach in many cases.
Yeah.
As the head of the Supreme Court, when did you ever find time to read?
Well, here and there. I always have some books by my bedside. And,
what's on it at the moment?
I just finished a wonderful novel called Tom Lake.
Oh, yes.
By I'm having a block. Anne Patchett.
Anne Patchett.
The woman who owns a wonderful bookstore apparently in Nashville, which I'd love to visit one day. But she writes very beautifully balanced and crafted novels, again about families and largely. But I finished reading that. I'm reading for a second time a writer named Bronston who writes about it's called The Creators, and it's kind of the history of acts of creation and art, and it's kind of like a review of right from ancient Egypt on about what great creators have done, and he picks certain ones. And I like nonfiction often for that. I read different biographies as well. So I'm quite eclectic, and it sometimes takes me a long time, and then even judges have holidays sometimes, and they can't read cases all the time. At least I found I couldn't.
You've had an extraordinarily distinguished and successful career in law, both here and internationally. You've more than proved that you're a wonderful writer, whether you're producing legal decisions, a biography, novels. What prompts you to write, though? What keeps you writing? Is it a compulsive urge? Is it a form of therapy? Is it a intellectual flexing of the muscles? Most people are happy when they've retired from the bench to say, I'm never going to have to write another word.
Yeah, I know.
And yet you won't stop.
I know. Well, I guess I have a problem.
Not you might, but we don't, because we get these wonderful books.
But you're right. I mean, a lot of judges, I don't think I'm telling secrets here, but a lot of judges really find writing judgments the hardest and most tedious part of their job, and it's hard for them, and they resent the time they have to take in their office or in writing out page after page and reviewing. I always loved writing judgments, and I would sometimes get my law clerks to fill in facts and some of the more tedious parts, but just the crafting of it, using words to, in that case, achieve quite a different result, to set out the arguments on both sides, to review the evidence and the law, and then come to a conclusion. I always got great satisfaction in that, and I always have. And when I started writing fiction, of course, it's totally different, because when you're a judge, you don't get to make it up. You take the facts and finally I could make things up, right? And it was quite fun. But I just think I love the act of getting the words on the paper, whatever it might be, and creating something out of it. As a sculptor a potter might make a pot or something, and see what comes of putting those words together. So it could be a legal problem in a court case. It could be fiction, it could be nonfiction. I'm sure you must find the same.
Well, I hate not having a project on the go.
Yeah.
I hate not having, my mind. I have the everyday life that we're all occupied with, and then I love having this other parallel life,
Yeah.
which is my life as a writer. But does this mean, though, that you're always thinking of the next thing?
I am, and sometimes I go through periods when I don't have any very good ideas, and then something will happen. I think, oh, that could make an interesting story. At my age now, I'm not pushing it. If something, I'm not looking, but something. I still have moments when I think, oh, wouldn't that be an interesting premise?
Do you keep notes? Do you write a journal?
No, I don't. I don't.
Have you ever written a diary or a journal?
Not really. I tried it once when I was 8 years old. It lasted a couple of months.
I wrote a diary as a child. I'm embarrassed when I look at it now. It's full of just what I ate. We had fish fingers for lunch.
Oh, mine was about the same, so I didn't find it very interesting. I'm glad I didn't continue because it would have been painful to look back. Yeah.
But so you can happily go for a week, 2 weeks, without writing something and not feel,
I think the feeling is always sort of there in the background, but I tell myself, just give it a break.
Yeah.
And you do need breaks sometimes, I think, yeah. But how some of these people put out as much as they do, I don't know. John Grishams of the world, who do 2 or 3 novels a year, it's just astounding to me. Now, I'm sure he has people helping him with research and all sorts of other things, but how he actually manages to do that is quite astounding.
I'm fascinated actually by how popular legal thrillers are.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I wish history was as popular, or biography. But I mean, legal thrillers, they're at the front of the bookstores, they're at the top of the bestseller lists. We all love them. I'm a complete addict. And I'm always thinking, why do they exert such a fascination? And you and Sonia earlier today had a really interesting conversation about how the law actually plays a very important role as a stable institution within a very unstable world. And I was wondering whether, is part of the attraction of legal thrillers that, they start with a question, who did it? And they come up with an answer. There's a predictability to the world. I mean, you've told us that the law sometimes gets it wrong.
Yeah, well, that's a fact.
But why do you think that legal thrillers are so popular? And also, just talk a little bit about the law within society and why it's so important.
Well, I think people are hardwired for justice in a broad sense. They think a lot about bad, and when somebody does bad to somebody else, that's when something bad happens as a result of a wrongdoing by another person, people feel instinctively upset. And that's, they have this sense that, thank God, people shouldn't go around hurting each other, and they shouldn't go around killing each other and robbing from each other. And the law embodies that. So, what we have, as you say, this chaos of human emotions, and some people who do bad things, and we look at the news and we say, how could that happen? And the law is the way we put some order on this and bring the perpetrator of bad things to justice. And it reassures us that we can live together in a society and deal with the bad things that happen. Because if you don't have the law, you can't deal with the bad things that happen. You have vendettas, you have vengeance killings, you have gang wars, That's how you solve problems if you don't have the law. But most people don't want that. They don't want to be part of that. They want the society to provide a structure through its laws and courts that will correct the injustices and keep the stability of society
and so
going.
legal thrillers, part of the attraction is that in fact they have the same sort of sense of predictability. You can't predict always what the law will say, but
No.
the law gives you a framework.
People know that there is a system that and they're interested in that system, imperfect as it may sometimes be. They know they need to have a system. And the other thing is that I learned this over many years as a trial judge and even as an appeal judge, that as a judge or a lawyer, but as a judge, I was treated to a constant show of humanity in all its weakness and strength and suffering and heroism, and even in minor acts. And you see this caravan of human behavior before you all the time. And that's very interesting to people, right? Really interesting. It makes interesting material.
I think that's why your characters are so great, because you've seen such a range of human behavior.
Yes.
It's all come in front of you at one point or another.
Yeah, and you don't just lift those things from a trial, but they give you ideas and
Can you imagine writing another novel but without Jilly Truitt?
yeah, I think I could, but I haven't thought about it very much. I'd have to think about the characters and so on. But sometimes I think it would be fun to be free of that and try something different. If I continue and I want to do another novel, it might be interesting to have a different character.
Because several, in fact, thriller writers write under different names for different series. They can be a different kind of writer.
Yeah.
With a different main character.
Yeah. Well, it would be interesting to try. Yeah.
So Beverley, we all miss you so much in Ottawa because you're more in Vancouver these days, although you are here.
Yes.
And you're still doing such valuable work in sort of being associated with the Ottawa Public Library and helping with the being the honorary chair of the new library project. So I'm hoping that Jilly actually will actually come to Ottawa.
She moved to Ottawa.
I want her to move to Ottawa. And because of your experience, and you have, being Chief Justice means that you are sitting there in the Supreme Court, just sort of next door to Parliament, watching it all, staying arm's length, but nonetheless a very interested and well-informed observer. So I think that Jilly should go into government.
Yeah? She'd run for office.
Well, she can either run for office or she can be drafted in as a senior public servant. I don't care actually what role you put her in. It's just that you're such an acute observer that instead of being inside the law, I want her to be inside government.
Something else.
Yes.
Well, I know a lot less about that, sadly, or perhaps fortunately. But it is. Thank you for that, Charlotte. I love Ottawa so much, and I've spent so much of my life here, over 40 years off and on. I still have residence here, and every summer we spent our months at our summer place on the lake, which is about an hour north of here. So I just couldn't give it up. And I love Ottawa so much. And today when I flew in, I was so happy to be back. And I've seen so many wonderful friends throughout the day, just bumping into people and here.
But why don't you want to be here in January?
Well, Vancouver isn't great in January either. It's very rainy. but I have family reasons for being there. And also, I do love the city, which anyone who reads these novels will appreciate. I love the West Coast.
I really appreciate that. And I love the descriptions of Vancouver and the bars they go to, the restaurants, the courtrooms. It's almost as though, in fact, emotionally you stayed there while you were in the court here. Obviously, it's a very favorite city.
Yeah. Well, I'm not as familiar with the bars and restaurants in Ottawa because I was a judge, I guess. I don't know. Well, there's an idea for a book. Great Restaurants and Bars of Ottawa.
Very short.
But the book isn't, I mean, even in Vancouver, it's not all about restaurants and bars. There's not very much in this one, actually. But I'm very, very sensitive to the topography of wherever I'm living, and Vancouver, of course, has wonderful geography, and both social and physical. But Ottawa does too. Ottawa is just magnificent.
Jilly looks out of her windows and she sees wonderful views, and we hear about that.
Yeah. Well, you get a great view from the top level of the new public library building. So there's the pitch.
Beverley, you've been the most wonderful guest, and our conversation, I knew that you would bring so much more to it than I have.
No,
and thank you. Congratulations on the book.
Thank you.
And now is your opportunity to get your 13 copies. So let's thank Beverley very much indeed.
Thank you. Thanks, Charlotte. That was just lovely.
And thank you, Charlotte. Thank you all for coming. The books are available right in there. Beverley McLachlin will be signing right over here. 32 copies per customer, I think we agreed upon as the maximum. Thanks for being here. Hope to see you next week. We've got Ben McIntyre, who is the Jean Le Carré of nonfiction, according to the New York Times. We'll see you there, and events continue through the month and through October and into November. The Karoloff event has just been announced. She's here in November, so we'll see you soon. Thanks for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.